Hello, and welcome to an intro to Anthro with two humans. I'm human number one, John McCray.
And I'm human number two, John Lehr.
And this is the podcast where we reassess what it means to be human. And the title of today's episode is Forensic Anthropology in Action, or If Professor Plum Dies, How Long Before He Becomes a Professor Prune? So, John, good luck fitting that one on the.
Yeah, that's going to be tough. We're going to get dinged on that one by Podbean, I'm sure, but I'll figure it out.
Maybe we can pay more. Don't they have something where you can have longer
I'm
titles?
Sure we can. But if there's anything I've learned in the podcast industry, is just give them a little more money.
You can do anything.
And they'll do anything.
But anyway, today's title is a reference to the classic board game Clue.
Clue and the movie.
And the movie as well.
Yes.
I'm not sure. Did you play Clue when you were
Oh
younger?
yeah. I remember getting into brutal fights with my brother over Clue. And, cheating. People looking in that envelope.
Yeah.
Great game. Great game.
And I think the movie too. The movie had different endings. Remember,
had three separate endings. I only saw one. I went to the theater and saw one. I don't know the other two.
Yeah,
I think it was Colonel Mustard in mine.
Don't give it away. Don't give it away. Spoiler. But in the game, there are several characters named after colors. For example, there's Miss Scarlet, Colonel Mustard, Mrs. White, Reverend Green, Mrs. Peacock, and of course, Professor Plum.
Mm-hmm.
And the object of the game,
Reverend Green. I don't remember it being Reverend Green. Is that right?
Well, it was you know what? It started in England. The game started out in England.
So a reverend could end up being the murderer? Jesus.
Yeah, that's the way it is over there, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, the men of the cloth have done far worse.
Yeah. Let's hope it's only one.
Yeah, exactly. And hope it's only murder.
Yeah. But the object of the game is to solve a murder by determining which character committed the crime with which murder weapon. Remember, there was a lead pipe, a revolver, a rope. And in which room you were in. The game takes place in a mansion. It was the dining room, the study, the billiard room. I always thought.
Yes. And there were secret passageways that you could get quickly across the board if you knew what to do.
Which was always exciting, even though it's like it's just a board game. I mean, it's not like you're actually going through it. But if you could. With enough imagination, if you could slip over to the conservatory or something.
Yes, the conservatory. Excellent.
But it's essentially an elimination game.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So you start out, before the game begins, you pull 3 cards, you put them in an envelope. There's one for the murderer, one for the weapon, and one for the room.
Yeah.
And then after that, the rest of the game is people moving around, asking about certain people or a certain weapon, and then people would have to, if they had that, they would show the card to the person secretly, and you would eliminate who the murderer could possibly be.
Yes. But the problem with the game is people would guess too early, they'd be wrong, and then the game would be over.
I know.
I hated that.
It was always, it's dramatic when they say, I know who it is.
Yeah. No, you didn't.
It would be like an Agatha Christie novel. It's a drama, like Hercule Poirot pulling people in to reveal who it was and being completely wrong. It was,
I went down an Agatha Christie hole, I don't know, about 10 years ago and just burned through them all. I just loved them. I never read them,
Yeah. I have a bet going with my wife, Mary, that I have to read all the Poirots by the time I'm 60, which means 2 more years I have.
No problem. No problem. You can burn right through those.
No, I'm 26 of them in. There's 40 or something.
And then she ended up writing. Didn't she write? She was amazing, Agatha Christie. Yeah. Amazing. And then you got the longest running play ever Mousetrap that she wrote.
Yeah.
And then I think, I don't know if this is 100%, we'll have to Google, but that she wrote the end to each. She had 3 series going, Perot, and then there were 2 others.
Yeah.
And she had an end book to each of them that she wrote before she died and put in a safe to be released upon her death, or something like that.
Really?
Somebody I got to find out if that's true.
Okay.
If that's true, I mean, Jesus, I would never do that. I'd want the credit.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Wow. But there's that famous photo that she puts in the back of all of her books of her with just a stack that's about 7 feet high of all the books that she's written, or like at least some of the books that she's written.
Yeah.
But I've hit the wall. I've hit the wall with the.
It kind of the homogeny kind of.
Yeah, it was written in England. Like, it started out in the late 20s, I think, and goes up through the 50s.
Yeah,
it's like,
at some point you're just like, oh Jesus, I know who it is.
I know. You begin to see certain things happening over it, like kind of she'd fall back on certain things towards the end.
She was getting older. Long in the tooth. She did the best she could.
It was working, though. It was working.
There's one of them where the lead character is the murderer.
Oh, that was it. Yeah,
that's a good one. Yeah,
I was going to say there's one. I don't want to say which one it is right now, but that one is one of my favorite books of all time.
Yeah,
like it's
good.
You really know it works. Like, you could follow the logic and reduce the logic down. And figure out, and I remember when it dawned on me towards the end of the book, I'm like, well, who could this be? And I started eliminating people just like in Clue.
Yeah.
And it was him. It was him. And then
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
I loved it too. That's a good one.
And I was thinking to myself at the time, like, no, she couldn't be that clever, right? But me, like the hubris of me. But yeah, she was. It was amazing.
She was.
But anyway, after watching a lot of crime shows, I'm not sure if you're into crime shows.
Hell yeah.
Mary watches, we got into watching Snapped. Have you ever seen Snapped?
No.
Snapped, the conceit is it's all about women who go crazy and they snap and they kill somebody. They kill their husband, or they kill their best friend.
Like true crime stuff?
True crime.
Oh, awesome. I'll check it out.
It's been going on for like 30 years, like 30 seasons or something.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Or there's one that's American Greed. You ever seen that one? That one's good. God, they're so stupid, but man, do they deliver.
Oh, yeah.
See, this is the thing I think, that some people in Hollywood don't realize. They're like, God, there's crap out there. And I'm like, you know what? When you work a real job and you come home, you want to crack a beer and you want to watch some Special Victims Unit, You don't want some, show that's going to win an Emmy that's all complicated and shit.
Right.
You just need some popcorn, man.
Yeah, and you want like a moral to it. I don't know. Mary used to say, like, once you turn 50, you get into British mystery shows. Sure enough, I turned 50 and suddenly I'm watching all like Vera. I'm watching all like, Shetland. I'm all into it.
Yeah.
And again, it's like, I want it resolved at the end of the show. I don't want this thing to go on.
No. I don't want to binge it. I just want, I do, but I want each one to end.
Yeah.
Wrap it up.
Yeah, I want to see somebody get some justice. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know. I don't want to think about it all week. Anyway, coming back to Clue, though, according to Alice Popovici, the game of Clue was created in England in 1943 during the blackouts, during the raids on England.
Interesting. Wow. God, I would have thought earlier.
Yeah, and it was invented by a munitions worker in Birmingham, England, named Anthony Pratt. And according to Pratt's daughter, her dad loved crime novels like Agatha Christie.
Yeah,
and was, quote, fascinated by the criminal mind.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I don't know.
She either became a really good cop or a serial killer.
Yeah. Well, she says that when she was younger, her dad was forever pointing out sites of famous murders to her. But for the most part, Clue it's a cozy mystery, or it's based on a cozy mystery, what they call cozy mystery.
Yeah.
And Amanda Flower, who's a cozy mystery writer, says that usually a cozy mystery, quote, involves an amateur sleuth, an unsuspecting victim, a quirky supporting cast, and a trail of clues and red herrings.
So, yeah. And they all end up in the dining room at the end.
Yeah. You call them in there as if that would ever actually happen. I love where it's always like the perpetrator is always going to sit there and try to pull it out at the end, without saying like, I got to go to the bathroom. I'll be right in there. I got to go, take my asthma medicine or something. And then you don't see.
That's a good excuse. Take my asthma medicine.
Yeah, I have to. I'm so excited. My anxiety.
Yeah.
But again, a cozy mystery will usually take place in a small village or in a mansion, like a mansion out in the country somewhere.
On the heath. Out on the heath.
Yeah. Like you can look out. He went for a walk out on the heath with his, his corgis. And next thing you know. But the thing is, we never see the actual violence, or usually we don't see the actual violence.
Right. That's true.
And I think in Clue, in the original game that Pratt came up with, I think the victim's name was actually Mr. Body, Boddy.
Oh, right. I remember reading that.
Yeah. He had a name to make it personal, but it was
Mr. Body.
Yeah. And Flowers says that in other subgenres of mystery and suspense, she says, this is a quote, the reader already knows who the killer is from the very beginning. In a cozy mystery, the reader has the opportunity to solve the murder right along with the main character. Right.
That's the whole deal.
Yeah.
That's Murder, She Wrote. You know what I mean?
I know. I will say there was a time years ago where my spouse at the time and I got into watching Matlock with Andy Griffith.
Jesus.
And
no wonder you guys broke up. I mean, you just turned insane. The two of you. You know a relationship is coming into the station when you're watching Matlock.
Yeah. You're like 20, 25 years old watching Matlock together. Like binging it. But the thing is, Matlock would always, he'd pull something out of his ass right at the end of the show. Something that there's no way you could figure that thing. Yeah.
I hate that shit.
Yeah. And he'd be like, in the last 5 minutes, you're like, I have no idea how he's going to prove this thing. I have a dry cleaning bill. It was always a dry cleaning bill that shows that you had your suit cleaned the day after the murder. And then the perpetrator would just break down on the stand.
Bullshit.
Yeah. But anyway, it's a real skill, like we were mentioning, to write a good cozy mystery, to be able to set it up to where people can follow along.
Oh God, don't I know it?
Yeah.
I did a show that was a procedural, a Western procedural.
Yeah.
And we had to do a little, we had to do a nod to a crime.
Yeah.
And you had to set that stuff up. God damn.
Yeah, to walk people through, to give them the clues that they can on top of everything, on top of trying to make an interesting story, to try to lead them through, have the clues without making it too obvious. What I mean?
And you can really screw it up easy. Where a network exec will say, wait a minute, why would they do this if they did? And you'd be like, oh, no. God damn it.
We've already shot it.
Yep.
Yeah, just cut it out in the editing. That'll confuse them.
We rejigger things in the you can do a lot in the edit room.
We just mentioned it. And I'm not going to say what the title of the book is, but there's only one book I've ever read that actually has pulled that off for me.
What?
The Agatha Christie book that I think we're talking about the same one.
Yes.
And I'm not going to say who it is.
Yeah.
And getting back to Clue, Papa Vici says that Pratt's original game had 10 characters in it.
What?
And he had 10 characters instead of the 6 in the American game. And he had murder weapons like an Irish shillelagh.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. And a hypodermic needle. He had as
Ooh, I
well. Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
God, ghastly.
Yeah. And I guess the American version when it first came out actually had a lead pipe. Like that little tiny
Yes,
pipe
it
was.
did. I had an old one that had, and the rope was a noose
Yeah.
and was made out of rope, like little
Yeah.
rope. It was rope, remember?
Yeah. It was like a
And then later
string
it
or
became
something.
metal, I think.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, they had that. That was actually lead. I guess they didn't want kids playing with lead or holding
Oh,
lead or putting it
Jesus.
in their mouth. Yeah.
God, no one. I'll probably die of cancer from playing Clue. What a
Yeah,
perfect way to go. Just
when
brew
was the
it in my
last time you
body
had?
right now. From
Yeah,
that first time I put it in my mouth.
just holding on to it, thinking. I
Yep.
wonder.
Yep.
Uh, and over the years, apparently, Clue has. I haven't played it in a while, but apparently, it's been updated, and the new versions have a baseball bat.
What?
Yeah, and a pistol with a silencer instead of a
Oh.
revolver.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this one always had a 45,
yeah,
a 45, what do you call it? Colt, I
yeah,
think, or something. Anyway.
yeah. But they're
Yeah.
they're trying to make it more
Jesus.
appealing to kids,
Yeah.
like a modern audience.
Well, they should
By
give him an Uzi then. Let's really go. An AK-47.
just
That's the
all,
way to go.
just
You
all
really,
guns, just
yeah,
all guns. Give them all.
all different guns. Exactly.
Get rid of
God,
the rope. Get rid of all that. Just all
all of
guns.
it.
Uh, and they've changed the characters too. So Colonel Mustard, who used to be like a stodgy old English military man,
Yeah.
is now Jack Mustard, a soccer star.
What? You lie.
No.
Is that true?
This might be I mean, the article was from England, so maybe this is the English version. But they've
Oh, well, they've
updated it.
ruined it.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
And Professor Plum, who used to be an archaeologist
Yeah.
in the original game, kind of a tie back in, is now a billionaire video game designer named Victor Plum.
You gotta be kidding me.
No, they changed it.
This has got to be a joke.
They got rid of Mrs. White, who was a housekeeper. And now it's Dr. Orchid, who's the adopted daughter of the owner of the mansion.
Okay. And she's
she,
white. Her piece is white, like a white orchid or something?
No, I don't know if it's like a purplish orchid
Oh,
color
I see.
or something.
Okay.
But she's supposed to be a scientist with a PhD with a dark past.
Uh-huh. They're like, you got a woman who's a cleaning lady whose name is Mrs. White. That's it's not testing well.
I know. She was, and again, to me, I always liked that it was set in another time. But I mean, why to make it like modern? It's just
right. The whole
horrible.
thing is that it's period. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
And just a couple of things before we move on. Anthony Pratt, same story as like lots of creative people.
Oh, no, he got ripped off.
He got ripped off.
Jesus.
So, in 1953, he sold the foreign rights to the game for £5,000.
No.
Yeah.
To Milton Bradley or something?
Or like the company that then sold it to Milton Bradley. So I'm sure he thought £5,000. I'm sure he's like, oh, that'll be good. We'll get a new radio or something, or we'll be able to pay for our heat for a while. And after that, 70 years later, still selling the game. They say it's maybe the fourth most popular game of all time, board game of all time.
Wow.
And his family just got that £5,000 back in 1953.
God damn it.
Yeah, that's somewhere.
That's why I don't go into board game inventing. I was off.
I was hoping. I thought that would be a spinoff that we would sell on our site. The Intro to Anthro with Two Humans board game. I'm just going to be a large flesh-colored marble, just to represent my head that you can move around. Oversized. It's like the size of a gumdrop. But today, John, we're instead of talking about cozy mysteries where we don't see the violence of the murder, we're going to be looking at real crimes.
Here we go.
Okay. And real bodies and what happens to the body after death.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm speaking about forensic anthropology and the anthropologists who help police solve crimes.
There we go. Here we go. We're talking about Quincy, right?
Well, yeah, he's like a forensic pathologist. We're talking about the anthropologist, the
Right.
archaeologist, and
Okay.
there's overlap to it. There's
Okay.
overlap,
Okay.
and we'll get into what some of that overlap is and what the difference is.
Okay.
And
Can you
next,
answer before we get into it? I'm sorry to interrupt.
okay.
I have a big question. I
Mm-hmm.
was in a speech competition group in high school called forensics.
Yeah.
Why is that forensics and forensic science about the study of the body? Like what's going on?
Off the top of my head, and I have feelings when I'm putting these things together that
Yes.
you're going to ask something, and I should just trust my gut and go in and research them.
We know each other too well.
I know. I'm like, he's going to ask that. I think it's about legal. It's about legal. Like forensics was about presenting an argument or a legal argument.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's what I think. I don't know.
Okay. All right. All right.
But I should have looked that up, and
No,
I'll call you later.
matter.
I'll text you later.
Okay, yeah. I'll Google it. I can do it. You've got too much to do.
Next to Indiana Jones, I'd say forensic anthropology is the branch of anthropology that most people know about, or at least like to read about.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And totally. The author, Patricia Cornwell, she's a crime fiction writer, has written many books that involve forensic science and forensic anthropology. There was a TV show, Bones. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Bones?
I never watched it, but I remember it.
Right. And the main character of that is a forensic anthropologist named Temperance Bones Brennan. Her nickname is Bones.
Temperance Bone Brennan. God, how the fuck did they pitch that to a network?
I know. Yeah, you read it. Like you read it.
And our lead character is named Temperance Bones Brennan.
Yeah, and the series is called Bones. It's her nickname. And she solves crimes along with a FBI agent named Seeley Booth. Okay, so that was
God.
And of course,
they're just making names up at this point.
Yeah, give me that phone book. And the series was actually based on the work and crime novels of the real life forensic anthropologist Kathy Reichs. And then also we mentioned already, I would say John Henry Hoyle.
Yes.
Actually,
yes, from the show Quick Draw.
Yeah.
Still on Hulu. And by the way, still trending well on Hulu.
Is it really?
Yes.
Is it really? That's great.
Yes.
That's
Isn't
great.
that amazing? People still love it. But
yeah,
I played John Henry Hoyle, who was a forensic scientist in his day.
And the series took place back in the 1870s, which, believe it or not, was an important time in the development of forensic anthropology and forensic science.
We didn't know until you came on board as our historical consultant.
Right.
Almost every episode of that show was inspired by Professor McCray. You gave us the ideas. Yeah. You would feed us stuff that was just amazing.
Yeah, and I think it was, I'd have to go through it. I'd have to look at things that I knew again, knowing what you would, like, what would interest you, like what you would begin, if I could give you a little thing that would pique your interest, and then you would begin to go off on it.
Yeah. So. You could play me like a fiddle.
But, John Henry Hoyle, his alma mater, for people who haven't seen the series, is Harvard.
Harvard University, right? Yeah.
And
he would let everyone know in every episode.
Yeah, repeatedly.
Yeah. It was a catchphrase. It was amazing.
Yeah, and actually Harvard at that time in the 1870s, or even before, beginning in 1849 in Harvard, there was a famous murder, which we'll talk about later. But also, Harvard was kind of like the ground zero for forensic anthropology at the time. So it was completely fit in with the real history that that John Henry Hoyle would.
There was a lot of real history in Quick Draw.
Yeah,
which is great.
But there was a couple. I always tried to throw them out to you, hoping they would get picked up. But there was always a couple of things I always wanted to see. I wanted to see John Henry Hoyle go back to Harvard to see Thomas Dwight, who Thomas Dwight is known as the father of forensic anthropology in America. And and he would have been there. They could have been like locker buddies or something.
Yeah, well, we did go back to Harvard in a flashback episode, or a portion of a flash, but it was about it was cleaning up some. We brought a character back to life, and we had to kind of figure out how that happened.
Right.
In time.
It worked though. It was a mystery. It's a mystery though.
Mystery.
The other thing I always wanted to see, Hoyle on a wind wagon.
Yes, you pitched that numerous times. And I love the idea, but I could not get it beyond you're in my bubble. And whenever I tried to pitch it beyond, people were like, wait, what?
Yeah.
The wind wagon. How the hell are we going to shoot a wind wagon?
A wind wagon was.
There were wagons that were you didn't need horses. They used sails.
Right. You had like a ship sail on them. Jesus. And you were supposed to just be able, because it was so windy out on the plains of Kansas at that time, you were supposed to, it'd be like a ship. It'd be like a boat that
you would. Incredible.
Yeah.
They must have been big, right?
I mean, they were the size of like a normal, like covered wagon.
Okay.
But the idea was, first of all, there's no roads.
No road. They're bumpy as hell.
Yeah. And you're on wooden wheels with iron on them, So it didn't go over so well. But I always wanted to see you chasing somebody in one, like a green screen. And
with AI and CGI, we could totally pull it off. Just put me in one of those suits with the ping pong balls and the green screen, and we'd figure it out.
The Wind Wagon episode. Yeah. I always wanted to see that. I'll keep pitching it.
Yeah.
And just before we continue, I just want to say a couple things. It's like, I love all anthropology, all branches of anthropology. And I don't like to judge different branches of anthropology.
That's fair.
But I would say that probably forensic anthropology, those are the ones that really capture the imagination of people.
Yeah.
Of going they're called out. They're the specialists called out to skeleton's been discovered. They're called out to do the excavation, bring archaeological methods to the excavation.
Yes.
And even though, it's so glamorous and there's so many TV shows about it, even though what they're dealing with, like decomposing bodies and like unmarked graves, things like that, are probably some of the most disgusting or disturbing things that you'll come across in anthropology.
But that dark stuff is fascinating. It fascinates us.
Yeah. And, I say that it's glamorous, exciting, so many shows. Like, I can't imagine, am I bitter about it? I don't know if I'm bitter about it because I can't imagine anybody doing a show about my research, which was on toxins produced by molds on stored grain.
Yes. But you were saying that it wasn't your thesis that the toxins could create hallucinogenic effects.
Some of them would be hallucinogens.
So people would be eating this grain with mold on it and tripping out.
Every time I did, yeah. And we'll talk about that in a later episode more. But every time I would give a talk on my thesis, in like different college classes, and there'd always be some guy be like, "Hey, are you trying to tell me I can get buzzed?"
That was my first thought too. It was like, wait a minute, what kind of mold? How do I?
What bread?
Yeah, what bread? How do you do it?
Yeah, but no, mine was more like, there's certain toxins that are produced by certain molds. For example, fumonazine is a toxin that's produced by Fusarium mold on corn, and it's been linked to like spina bifida and certain birth defects. So my thesis was talking about how these could have been another factor leading to site abandonment as your population becomes stressed and diminishes. But again, you don't see, Michael Mann or J.J. Abrams contacting me to do a show about me.
No, they don't want to do a mold show. It doesn't test well.
You can give me a love interest. You can give me a love interest, maybe. That tension.
But we're going to see mold every episode. There's going to be an insert shot of something moldy that you're going to find.
It was awful. When I was doing it in our house, we were living in Santa Fe at the time. I had moldy corn in bags all over the house. And Mary was like, oh my God, how long do you have to go on this thing? So John, let's get started. For what do we mean by forensic anthropology? In his book, Forensic Anthropology, Stephen Byers says that forensic anthropology is the field of study that deals with the analysis of death, analysis of human skeletal remains resulting from unexpected deaths.
Whoa. Okay. That's pretty clear.
Yeah. And he then adds that forensic anthropology deals with skeletons of deceased persons that the medico-legal community has defined as requiring investigation. So usually there's something suspicious about it.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah.
And Karen Burns, in her forensic anthropology training manual, she says that forensic anthropology is best known as the discipline that applies the scientific knowledge of physical anthropology and archaeology to the collection and analysis of legal evidence.
Okay.
So we're using our analysis from physical anthropology, what we know about skeletons from physical anthropology and archaeology, to try to help solve a crime.
Yes.
And generally,
always some scratch marks on a bone somewhere that, right. Wait a minute. You see these?
Yeah. What is going on? And usually what they like to say is, if there's flesh on it, then you're going to be looking at the coroner or the forensic pathologist. But if there's only bones, then you have to call in the forensic anthropologist.
Yeah, you got to tell a forensic anthropologist to put his mold down. Come on out, we need you.
Hit the old fireman's pole and get down there. Get in the white suit. I would put on my white suit before I even leave the house.
Yeah, yeah. I'd love to. You should be in a white suit at all times,
with like the little booties and everything.
Oh, ready to go.
Yeah, it's the same thing when you see somebody wearing medical scrubs.
Yeah,
but they're out to lunch or something.
Yeah, I don't like that.
Yeah,
I don't know what they've been touching.
I know, it's like you're so worried about it. Like I have my scrubs on, but then I'm going to go out to Jimmy John's or something, and then come back to work.
Yeah, you're going to trade stuff back in and bring stuff out, and they're always wearing the Crocs. They all wear the Crocs.
Yeah.
God, those must be great for your feet. Maybe we should try it. Have you ever tried Crocs?
I don't know. Can we? I've never worn Crocs. They look like your feet would sweat in there. They're all plastic.
But they all wear them. All of them.
Yeah.
They must be good.
I don't know. Why don't if we could get Crocs to be a sponsor of our show,
maybe they can send us some. Yeah.
Yeah. Just a couple pairs to try them out while we're.
If they're comfortable, I'll never take them off.
It just seems I don't know. I shouldn't judge. I'm not going to. I won't hold judgment on them.
I'm just saying they all wear them. You can't deny that.
The other thing, forensic anthropologists, they always talk about something called medico-legal significance. Okay, so they're looking at cases of medico-legal significance. And Byers says that in the United States, the definition of that is it applies to people who have died within the last 50 years when not in the care of a physician. So why within 50 years? Well, that's supposedly the time that it's most likely. Yeah, and also that the person who may have knowledge of the decedent, they would still be alive.
I see. And
probably even the perpetrator within 50 years would probably still be alive. So we're still trying to find somebody to bring to justice, I guess.
Good.
Yeah. And then it's like, well, it has to be a suspicious death, meaning that, this is going to be a body that you find out in the woods or in a unmarked grave somewhere.
with their head chopped off in the back of a car.
Right. I mean, it's gruesome, but that's what it is, because if they died under the care of a doctor, then we have a pretty good idea.
Yeah.
Unless a doctor's in on it. Unless a doctor.
Yeah. You never know. Well, yeah. You'll be in my care when you pass. And it'll seem totally natural.
Oh, no. I don't know. Just take me out, roll me out somewhere. Somewhere I would have liked. I don't know.
And I'm going to get you hopped up on Delano. The only way to go.
Dump me out back. I like bowling. You could dump me out back of a bowling alley.
You're a good bowler. You're so low to the ground. You can get so down there. You roll the ball. You don't throw the ball. You roll it.
Yeah, I'm old school. It's straight on. I'm not trying any fancy hooks.
You're an impressive bowler. You're very consistent.
My last year of college, all I did, I skipped class and just went to the student union to the bowling alley. I'd be there at like 9:30 in the morning, drinking beer and bowling for about 7 hours. Then go home, pass out, and then get up and go out again.
Well, that's a great place to drink heavily. And also, you used to be able to smoke at the same time. And I know you were a big smoker, so you could smoke. You can't do any of that anymore.
Yeah.
Now everything's glow in the dark and laser lights. Bowling is like, I don't know.
I love just the shine of the wood, the natural wood.
Yeah.
Almost like a ship or something, seeing a ship that's been made.
And the light odor of foot odor just wafting through the air. And it's kind of a sport, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's like golf, and you're just throwing a thing down. It's very simple. Just knock those things down.
And it's to me, it's very beautiful in its simplicity. To be out there by yourself, it's almost like water skiing when the lake is really smooth.
Yeah,
you just get out
meditative.
there.
You're right.
Yeah,
you're
right.
The
only one out there.
Yes,
just the sound of it.
9:30 in the morning with a good buzz going on.
Get up. Think to myself, you know what? I'm not going to geography today. I'm gonna head on over I'll just walk right past that building and head on over to the Union.
I love that they actually were already selling beer at 9:30.
I mean, the only guy. The only guy. Yeah.
Don't talk to that guy.
He's back. He's back again. And a couple things that forensic anthropologists traditionally try to determine is, like we said, once the soft tissue has degenerated to the point that medical forensic specialists, like pathologists, can't determine the demographics, meaning like the age, the sex of the person, the ancestry, the time since death, and the cause and manner of death.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. You got to bring in the specialists now.
Right. And when we're talking about cause of death, we're talking about things like gunshot wound, blunt force trauma,
strangulation,
tuberculosis.
Tuberculosis?
Yeah.
You murder somebody with tuberculosis?
It takes a long time. They actually outlast you. Yeah.
Wow.
No. Somebody had tuberculosis. You're trying to figure out why they died.
I see. And it could be of natural. It may not. It's not always murder.
Right.
You're just trying to figure it out. Yeah.
Keep an open mind. Why jump to that conclusion?
Yeah, true.
The other thing is the manner of death. And that's where you're talking about, is it natural, an accident, suicide, homicide, or unknown?
Yeah. But if their head's chopped off and it's in a box, you don't need a genius to discuss the manner.
I mean, it looks that way. But you don't know who chopped the head off. It could have chopped their own head off. You know what I mean?
I don't know. Okay. You're right. There is you're right. We got to go. We got to figure it out. Take step by step.
Yeah. We don't jump. Don't be like in Clue, where you go and the second round, you're already naming who did it. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Everybody hold up.
Yeah. And Karen Burns says that the cause of death, like the gunshot wound or whether, is actually a medical determination, whereas the manner of death is a legal determination.
Okay.
So that's kind of the difference there.
Mm-hmm.
And in 1982, there was a really famous forensic anthropologist named Clyde Snow, and he came up with like 10 questions that forensic anthropologists should try to answer.
Okay.
And the first one was, are the remains human?
Okay. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Let's figure that out from the get-go.
Yeah, that seems like that, you don't want to like be arrested. It rounded people up and you find out it's like a squirrel bone or something.
Right.
The other thing is, when did the death occur was one of the questions that he said. How old was the decedent?
Okay.
What was the decedent's sex?
Okay. That's easy. You go right to the pelvic bone.
Exactly.
Right to the pelvic bone. I know that one.
Because females will generally have like a wider lower pelvic bone.
Yeah, because they got to push a human out from there.
Right. So that's one of the places where you usually do want to look for that. If you have a pelvic bone.
Right to the pelvis.
Usually male hips are like vertical. I guess there's some variation in it. Sometimes you'll have some people
I've got a little swing to my gait.
Oh, I know. In fact, everybody in our sophomore year do. And then also the decedents, and Snow used the term race. People are because race, since Snow came out with this, it's people consider that race is more of a cultural construct rather than a biological construct. So now people will use like ancestry.
Yes.
Or usually ancestry is what people use now.
Okay.
And then you'll look at what was the decedent's stature, their body weight, their physique.
Right.
You're looking at their height. Certain things, like you could take your humerus bone, you can measure the humerus bone and then multiply it by 5.
Yeah.
And that will give you an approximate height of the person.
You're kidding. I love that.
I mean, it's rough. That's a
good thing to know.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm going to use that someday, that information.
I don't know. You should check. You should just check to see if your license is correct about your height.
Yeah. I'm going to measure my bone and multiply it by 5.
Yeah. And then we get, of course, down to like the cause of death and the manner of death, which we mentioned.
Yeah.
And people will always say, well, what about DNA testing? And DNA testing, I read in Forensic Anthropology Tools of the Trade an article by Amy Whipple, and she talked to a forensic anthropologist named Mercedes Doretti, and she said that DNA testing is one of the biggest, most welcome technological changes in forensic anthropology. But she says you still have to go in and double check with like this anthropometry, this kind of measuring and looking at the bones.
Yeah. And you're still, that's not going to tell you the manner. It's not going to tell you, there's lots of questions it doesn't answer.
Right. But it does help you identify bones. And she was talking about in mass graves, Doretti was talking about in mass graves for like in cases of genocide or something. Yeah. And she was saying how when it's all mixed together, a lot of that genetic material will be mixed, and you still have to go in and make an identification from the bones.
Yeah.
So just to come up with a quick biology of the human skeleton, John, human bones are 35% organic material, such as cells, collagen, and ground substance, which is composed of proteins. And the remaining 65% of the bone is inorganic material, which is composed of mineral salts, mostly calcium phosphate.
Wow. Bones are really weird things.
I know.
They're just really weird.
Yeah, I think so too.
Don't they make white blood cells too? Or they're connected to that in some weird way?
And the marrow. Like the marrow.
What?
Yeah.
That's so weird.
Yeah. Byers notes that humans have 206 bones in their body. So,
are those counting the ear bones, the 3 ear bones?
Well, they're those little tiny ossicles, the bones in the ear. Yeah. It does count those.
Good.
It does count those.
Evil Knievel said he broke every bone in his body, and I was like, really? He broke all 6 ear bones.
There's one guy like you at every press conference for him. He'd be like,
every bone.
Yeah. What about your ossicles? How about your ear ossicles? Let's see those. Let's see the X-rays on those.
The hammer. What are they called?
Hammer, stakes,
anvil.
Hammer, anvil, and stirrup.
Stirrup. That's it.
And also the skull, like you say, had 22 visible bones, and then you have those ossicles which aren't visible. Those 3.
Wow.
And usually the bones in the skull are all connected to each other along suture lines. So you'll have like suture lines.
I see.
Yeah, it's so you have those little.
He's holding up a skull.
I'm holding up the skull for those of you who are watching. The suture lines are where those different plates. So there's 22 different bones that make up your skull.
Weird.
And then when they come together and make these suture lines or these seams on your.
So weird. God, is that weird?
And generally, they're all connected except for the mandible, except for the jawbone.
We all know about the mandible. Go back to some of our earlier episodes about scams and shams.
Yeah.
The mandible. The mandible is almost always involved.
That's a very impressive, John, that you're calling that back. Let me put that in your notebook. Let me put that a little tick
I know
mark.
you keep a file. I'm trying to impress you.
To see that you're listening. And the mandible's the one that's not connected. So in horror movies and everything where you see the skeleton coming out, somebody with the mandible on it.
Yeah.
I mean, not that they're trying to be realistic, but I mean, usually if you find a skull out in the woods or something,
right.
It's not, you're usually finding just like the cranium, the top part of the skull.
Because the tissue would be gone. And so the mandible would be loose.
Right. Exactly. Well, you really turning it on today.
You really got my attention when we're talking about murder. Now I'm in.
Yeah. You have 24 vertebrae in your back.
Don't I know it?
Cervical, thoracic, and lumbar. So you have 7 cervical vertebrae in your neck, 12 thoracic vertebrae, and 5 lumbar vertebrae.
Oh. God, the ones in my neck are killing me.
Are they? Do you have trouble with that?
I keep all my stress in my neck. And back in the day, there was a long time ago, I had a guy who would crack my neck. He was the only guy who could do it. But the very top vertebra, he could crack it. Oh, my God. It was the best feeling.
What would he do? Like the old, let me have it. Let me have it. And they snap it.
He would just crack it. I know you're not supposed to do that, but God, it felt good.
We had, when I was training in martial arts down in Redondo Beach, we had 2 chiropractors that would train with us. And it was so great because when we got done, they would give us an adjustment as well. It was so wonderful.
I love that stuff.
Yeah. Another thing, John, all mammals, including humans, have the same bones. Okay. What? With only a few additions and subtractions. So cows, sheep, deer, coyotes, elk, we all have the same bones. They just look different.
Wow. So, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, remember Alien 3 when a dog was infected?
No, I don't. I don't. What happened?
I mean, you could see the alien was able to adapt to it just because it was a dog, probably because of the bones,
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking.
Well, I think it goes back to like our mammal ancestor, like way back to our mammal ancestor.
That fish. That weird fish that walked out.
We all have the same bones. And there's a few, Byers says that there's a few bones that you can look at to kind of tell if it's a human or animal bone. He said usually size is the thing. Like, for example, like if you look at a shin bone from a cow, obviously it's going to be a lot larger.
Yeah.
And then also the penis bone. For example, there's
I knew we were headed here. But we don't all have penis bones. Do we? Do you and I have penis bones?
No. I think it's usually like bowls or something. Like
I mean, I do right now, but I mean, couldn't help it.
My brother gave me for Christmas. My brother gave me a cane made out of a bull penis.
Right.
Yeah.
I knew there was something. Yes.
Yeah, to give a complete callback, you would ask me, you saw a picture of me with that over New
Yes.
Year's.
I was like, what is that thing? And you're like, it's a penis bone. I was like, what?
Yeah, I don't know. My brother found it and bought it for me. Bought it for both of us, I guess. So we were
He
able
has a great sense of humor.
Yeah. And you would ask, like, coming back to shillelagh, you were like, is that an Irish shillelagh?
Yeah, that's what I thought it was. I thought it was a shillelagh. And no, it turned out I couldn't have been more wrong. It was like 2 feet long, right?
Yeah, it's like a bully stick or something, a bully stick at the pet store. Only you put a metal rod in that thing and then put a brass handle on it.
Damn.
And suddenly you're like a gentleman.
Jesus, with a penis bone. I don't know.
Also, Byers says that there's similarity between certain animal and human bones. For example, the front and hind paws of bears resembles a human hand. The bones in the human hand. Yeah.
I mean, I play with my dog's paws. I get it. You can see the similarities, of course.
And also, there's a similarity between the premolar teeth of pigs and human molars.
Oh my God.
As well.
My kids are getting their wisdom teeth now. It's going to cost me a fortune to pull those out. Yeah.
Oh, do you have yours? Do you have?
I know. Pulled them out.
Did you?
Yeah. How about you?
Mine came in.
They came in, you lucky dog. No, mine had to be pulled out, but fortunately, my brother was dealing blow at the time. This was back in the 80s.
Yeah.
And I came home to get them pulled out and just did cocaine.
Did it help?
Yeah. Oh God, yeah. It was I highly recommend that as a recovery.
I had same thing with my brother. He wanted to get some teeth pulled, and he went into he always wanted to go cheap. He always wanted to go cheap, and he came out of there like the guy had said, "Okay, come back in a couple hours." And my brother was like, because I was supposed to be driving him, he was like, let's go to the liquor store. He was like, I got it. This guy, he goes, this guy looks rough. He looks rough. So some of the things you can look at, again, we said the size, you could look at the structure of the bone, like how the bone is to try to determine if it's human or not. The other thing you can look at is, human bones, as we're growing, the caps on the bones, on the long bones, they're not attached yet. And that's how we're able to let that bone grow.
Oh.
So and they're called epiphysis, which are the end caps on the bones.
Okay. So they're not connected? The end caps aren't connected to the main bone while it's growing?
While it's growing, there's some cartilage in there, but it hasn't fused yet. And that's how, because if it was fused, then you couldn't grow. You couldn't get bigger.
Makes sense. How would you grow?
So what will happen is people will bring in bones that look like infant bones, human infant bones.
Right.
And so a forensic anthropologist will look at it and see if the epiphysis, those end caps, have been fused onto the bone. Because if it's been fused onto it, then they know that's an adult bone. And if it's a little tiny adult bone, it's most likely going to be an animal bone.
Right.
So,
right. Jesus.
Yeah. The other thing you can look at the rib bones in a human have because we're walking upright, bipedal instead of being on all fours, our rib bones and our spinal bones will look different from the bones in a quadruped.
Yes, and which was demonstrated clearly in Alien 3. That alien was running around clearly.
I wish you're going to have to post that. I want you to go on and find that and then post that for it.
It's a terrible one. God, they got Sigourney Weaver to do it, and she's in some weird prison.
Really?
It's the worst. Just terrible.
No. That first one was scary and the second one was scary.
Both 1 and 2 I thought were great. 1 was a horror film and 2 was an action film. It was great. They were great. But 3, oh boy. And then I think 4, they were swimming. They had them in water.
And then 5, they were just having regular
5 was
jobs, office jobs.
amazing somehow.
It came back. It came back around.
Well, I think in 5 or the last one that you realize that humans were the ones who, again, spoiler alert, the humans were the ones who invented the aliens. Like they weren't aliens.
Really?
Yeah. You find out that it was a human experiment gone wrong or something. Yes.
Oh, God. All right.
It was kind of interesting.
Well, thanks for saving me some time. Saving me some time watching all those.
There was a completely white alien.
Really?
What do you call it?
Albino?
Albino alien in that one.
Really?
Yeah.
Have you ever done a horror film? Have you done?
Never. God, I would love to.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be great? Just to get your neck ripped open or something.
Oh yeah. You've been
squibbed
though before, right?
Yes, I got squibbed. I was shot with a machine gun. Jon Favreau directed it. I was a drug addict. And Jon Favreau was a kind of friend of mine, from Chicago. And he was like, should we do it again? Looking at me like, grinning, like, you want to do it again? Which I think he'd already had it. And I was like, hell yes. So they squibbed me up again and did it. It was fantastic.
Well, that was great. I don't think I ever saw that one. Was it a...
No, nobody did. It was a pilot that never went. It was a rich cop, bad cop, good cop, bad cop, bad cop, something like that.
Yeah.
It was for Fox.
You were a drug addict. All right,
I was a drug dealer, I believe, and
really?
I got machine gunned by some gangsters. Fantastic.
Did you have lines, or you just come out of
I had some lines, but I get killed right away.
How about a science fiction? You ever do a science fiction?
No, I did a comedy science fiction that we tried to sell, but no, never. And I'm a huge science fiction fan, as you can tell.
Yeah. Some of the other things that you can use to determine age would be, again, looking at the sutures, the suture lines.
Yeah.
The skull, again, I'm holding up the skull again. The skull, 22 bones to allow the brain to grow. Usually those bones in the beginning when you're young.
Soft. Everybody knows that. The soft spot on a baby.
Yeah. And they're not fused yet.
Yeah.
So as you get older, they don't become fused until you stop growing. So you can tell by what the seams, the sutures look like, how old someone is. If it was an adult or if it was a younger person, because usually those seams will become obliterated as you get older.
Wow.
So
wow.
As far as
further obliviate, if somebody gets attacked with a sledgehammer and they're smashed up,
right. So you'd still try to find parts of that to try to tell how old they were. The other thing is determining the sex of an individual by looking at the skull, and you can kind of feel on your own skull if you want. You can go ahead and grab it. But usually male skulls are going to be a little bit more robust, a little bit more rugged. Female skulls are a little bit more refined. The other thing, men usually have pronounced brow ridges more than females. And all of this is relative, really. So it's a comparison. And then you'll feel at the back of your head, usually men have a hook. That hook on the back of their head, which sometimes you'll see guys who have shaved their heads and they have that really big hook on the back of it.
Yeah. You've lost a lot of hair and you have a very handsome skull.
Oh, no.
You really
do.
Really?
Yes. Okay. Well, thank you.
I shaved my head once or cut it really short and boy, no.
No.
I look like a chemo patient or
really?
Yeah.
Really?
It's not good.
Was it pointed or was it?
And just not a handsome skull. Unfortunately,
I think you could pull that off now.
Really?
How about growing a beard with it? Or...
I don't know, man. I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah. Your hair is really, really thick. We always thought that you were going to lose your hair at one time.
Yeah, I know. Well, my dad did.
Yeah.
But my grandfather on my mother's side, no.
Really?
And they say that's, I don't know. I think that's been proven.
I had baldies on both sides for me, so I did never.
Yeah, you were screwed. But
the other thing,
good. It's a good look.
Nah, thank you.
I think so.
I don't know. Everything all right? Everything all right?
I think I would describe you as a handsome man.
Really?
Older, but handsome.
All right, we got to move on. Let's move on before you start getting into my personality.
And I could tell how old you are by the sutures on your skull.
You could feel them.
I could feel them.
The other thing, usually the male forehead slants back more than a female forehead. Mm-hmm. So the female forehead is going to be usually higher and a little bit more rounded.
Mm.
And then as far as telling ancestry about that, and again, these terms are changing, but there's generally 3 broad ancestral groups: European, African, and Asian, that people will look at. And you could tell certain things by, for example, the shape of the eye orbits or the eye holes. Mm-hmm. Usually people of European ancestry or a skull with some European ancestry will have angular eye sockets.
Okay.
More angular than people of African or Asian descent. Usually African descent will have rectangular eye sockets. And Asian will have round eye sockets.
Okay.
So,
right.
And European descent, again, because we're part Neanderthal, they often have heavier brow ridges than, say, for example, someone of African ancestry or Asian ancestry.
Oh, so the Asians and the Asian ancestry and African ancestry don't necessarily have any Neanderthal in them?
Well, no. Remember, we talked about the Denosovans in the Asian ancestry. But again, right. Usually European ancestry will have, especially males, will have a little bit more pronounced brow ridge.
Hell yeah.
That people, Africans, people of African descent and Asian descent. And then also another thing, talking about the sutures on the skull, people of Asian ancestry usually have really complicated sutures on their skull compared to Africans and people of African and European descent.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so
it's like a cross stitch. It's like it's like macrame. Like what?
Yeah, I can't describe it, but when you see it, for example, I worked with different skulls, and when you see it, it's noticeably more. I don't want to say jagged, but it's definitely more complex than the sutures of a European ancestry or African ancestry.
Weird.
Yeah. And really, again, all of this it's just comparisons. So there's a lot of variation. There's a lot of overlap. And you're just, as forensic anthropologists, you're trying to just come up with some idea. And over time, looking at a lot of skulls, you get better at doing it to where you can tell the differences in it.
Amazing.
Yeah. And then finally, just, the nostril or the nose hole, for example, and the bridge of the nose is something else that they will look at. So for European ancestry, usually has a more narrow nostril hole with a higher bridge of the nose and a higher root of the nose, which is where the nose goes into the rest of the skull behind the eyes.
That's how you can kill somebody. Smash that bone up into their brain. Give them a lobotomy.
Yeah. I don't know. Everybody always talks about that. What was in martial arts? Was it duck maul is supposed to be the death touch, where you can kill somebody with just a touch of the fingers or something like that.
Jesus. Right.
And I remember I was at a studio I was training in one time, and the phone rang, and we were all training, but somebody went and answered the phone, and they said that the guy had asked. He goes, "Do you teach duck maul?"
Wow.
Wanting to learn how the duck maul, and they said, "What time do you close?"
Oh my God! I need to know tonight.
Yeah, I need to get down there tonight and figure out.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
Just John, real quick. The other thing that forensic anthropologists are usually called in to ask for is to help with is the post-mortem interval, which is the time since death.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
And there's certain things that you can look at right after a few hours after death, like the medical investigators will look at like the livor mortis, which is the settling of blood, the algor mortis, which is the cooling of the body temperature, rigor mortis, the stiffness. You can tell like approximately how long someone's been dead. And then you can also look at changes in the vitreous humor or in the fluids of the eye.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh, God.
But again, after 24 hours or after a few hours, these become less accurate. Right. So that's when they call in the forensic anthropologist to come in.
The bone guy.
Right. Or if you're finding just bone or like partially fleshed skeletons, it's harder for like a forensic pathologist to do their work on it. And they usually call in like a specialist for it. And that's where there's places, I'm not sure if you've heard of the body farm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Where they study that. They just leave bodies out there and have them decompose and study that to see.
Right.
Oh, God.
And that one's, the original one was at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, was started by forensic anthropologist Bill Bass.
I had a girlfriend from Knoxville back when I was about 13. I wonder if she lived near the body farm.
I don't know. How'd you meet a girl from Knoxville?
She was she was friends with Heather Norris. Remember Heather Norris?
Yeah.
From high school. She was a friend of hers visiting. I don't know how they met, camp or something. Yeah, I think her name was Dana. I was so in love with her.
Maybe
it didn't work out.
13. Well, you still with your 13-year-old girlfriend. Years later,
worked out.
You guys you stop at 13. You don't mature past it.
Well, that is kind of the truth.
So anyway, but yeah, like John was saying, they will take bodies and put them into in barrels, or they'll leave them out in cars, or they'll leave them out, just different things, and it looks horrible.
Yes,
it looks horrible.
Yeah,
God. But it's important because then that's what they use to get some of this data that they can help determine how long someone's been dead or what happened to someone.
I don't want anywhere near that death farm. I don't want to go anywhere near there. I'm glad people are looking at it, but I don't want to go.
Yeah, I mean, there's many, but Bill Bass wrote a book, which is really good, called Death's Acre. Wow. But he goes in and kind of talks about his history of it. I think, did I mention he went to KU, or he was a professor at KU for a number of years.
Your alma mater.
My alma mater. And
Jayhawk.
right. A lot of his earlier cases were working with the Kansas Bureau of Investigation.
Wow.
Out in Lawrence. But since then, they've started death farms or body farms in different climates. For example, I think there's one in Arizona now to see what a dry climate will do for a body. So these things are popping up all over the place.
God damn. Well, I don't want to run. I don't want to see one.
Don't want a franchise?
No, I don't want to be a part of
it. So John, just now, I just want to touch on a couple specific cases before we wrap up here.
Okay. In
the history of forensic anthropology. And a famous one, again, like we mentioned, happened in Harvard in 1849.
Wow.
And that was the Parkman murder.
Okay.
And in the article, How a Harvard Doctor's Sordid Murder Launched Modern Forensic Anthropology, Christina Kilgrove describes the case. And she says that around Thanksgiving, 1849, a doctor at Harvard Medical School named George Parkman went missing. Okay. And Parkman was a wealthy guy, and he came from one of the Boston Brahmin, one of the best families in Boston.
Okay.
And he was the guy who had donated the land that the new Harvard Medical School sat on.
Wow.
So he was into real estate, and he would also lend money to people. And
Oh boy.
they said he would always walk around to collect his debts. He was always walking around Boston to collect his debts. And one of the people he loaned money to was another Harvard professor named Dr. John Webster, who was a chemistry and geology professor.
Okay, he did it. I can tell you that.
right.
He did it in the conservatory with the dagger.
Well, almost. He did it in his lab.
Oh, God.
But anyway, Webster had borrowed $400 from Parkman, which was the equivalent of $10,000 today. But the problem was Webster didn't pay it back.
Damn.
So I guess Parkman was always asked him about it.
Where's my money? Where's my money? Where's my money? Where's my money?
And if you see photos, or I mean the drawings and paintings of Parkman at the time, you can kind of see like it was probably pretty annoying.
Yeah.
When he was asking for
money. God. Here comes Parkman.
yeah. Just going around, just collecting his debt. But what happened was, what made Parkman really mad is he found out that Webster was trying to get another loan. Okay. And Webster was trying to get another loan using collateral of a mineral collection, like a really expensive mineral collection. But he had already promised that mineral collection to Parkman.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. So Parkman found out about it and went over there.
Who has a mineral collection?
he was a geology professor, So he was like,
my mineral collection.
I've always got those that quartz collection of mine.
That labradite is I've got a 6-pound bag of that.
Yeah. I don't know, but they say he used that for collateral with Parkman, and then he was trying to get another loan. So anyway, Parkman confronted him about it. And he told Parkman, well, come on over to the lab. I have your money.
Whenever anybody says that, don't go to the lab.
I know. Parkman was never seen again.
Okay.
After they saw him going into the lab,
nobody
never saw him again.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it was in the lab. It was Parkman in the lab with a mineral collection.
Yeah, just a big piece of like quartzite or something, whatever. And there was during the investigation, there was the janitor at the school said that he remembered the week before that he said that Professor Webster was acting strangely at the time. And he said that Professor Webster had, like, first of all, yelled at him, which was uncharacteristic, and then apologized by giving him a turkey for Thanksgiving.
Well, that's not a great gift, because everybody knows if you spend a couple $100 at a grocery store, you get a free turkey.
I know.
So he just gave him his free turkey from Ralph's.
And Littlefield, the janitor, also said he remembered one day hearing water running in Webster's lab.
Okay.
But yet the door was locked from the inside, which I guess the door was usually unlocked.
I don't know. This janitor seems like a real busybody, if you ask me.
No. Well, what's interesting, you bring that up. See, you got the detective mind. They said that he only remembered this after the police started looking at him as a suspect.
Oh, okay. Oh, he's the red herring in the story.
He's the red herring. Yeah,
he
got scared and suddenly remembered. Maybe he was trying to protect, Webster at first. Like, well, I'm not going to tell him about that. And then they started looking at
turkey. Yeah. But then when the pressure's on, I heard water running.
It's just like a mystery. You know what I mean? So anyway, he said that he looked under the door while the water was running, and he kept seeing Webster going back and forth from the furnace to the fuel closet.
Ooh.
Okay. So anyway, over the Thanksgiving break, what Littlefield did is he got suspicious, and so he broke into the lab. And when he broke into the lab, he said he found a human pelvis bone, a dismembered thigh, and a lower leg in the private privy, meaning in the toilet that was in the lab. And so then what the police did is, when the police came, they found a chest in the lab with a headless, armless, hairless, partially burned torso.
And
a thigh stuffed inside the chest.
A thigh?
Yeah, like a thigh bone or like a
stuck in there.
Yeah, in the chest. Yeah,
Just to fit it in the why? To
just
fit it in the
hiding it,
chest?
just hiding it in the
He
chest, and
lost it. He just totally lost it.
yeah.
He
Well,
he had some mercury in his mineral collection and just totally drove him crazy.
yeah, like Parkman. I'm sure it was Parkman just asking for his money,
Yeah.
and then just
Shut up.
yeah.
I'm gonna put your thigh in your chest if you don't shut
Yeah.
up. What?
Well,
Give me
well,
my
no,
money.
in the there was a big wooden chest. Is what I'm talking about, like a
Oh,
big
I
wooden
see.
chest.
I
Yeah,
see.
with the
In the
torso
chest.
was
Oh,
yeah.
I thought he stuffed it in there like a turducken. Like, why would he put it in there?
Yeah,
Oh,
that would be awful. So anyway, what the police did is they needed help identifying the body, okay, because they couldn't find the skull. So they called in Oliver Wendell Holmes Sr., who was the father of Oliver Wendell Holmes, the Supreme Court Justice.
wow.
Yeah. And he was an anatomy professor at Harvard at the time, and also a guy named Jeffries Wyman, who was a anatomy professor. And what they did is they went through and looked at the bones and reassembled what bones they had to see that it matched the stature of Parkman. And so anyway, they were able to, and then Oliver Wendell Holmes, he would look at the body, and what he saw is that there were some nicks on the rib bones that looked like he had been stabbed. The
It's
skeleton.
always those nicks and marks on the bone.
Yeah,
I've seen enough Law and Order to know that one.
yeah. But the real kicker was they found the dentures in the furnace. Okay,
And then it's always the dental records.
yeah. But 1849, they called in the dentist. Parkman's dentist came in and identified the dentures in the furnace as matching the mold that he had to make Parkman's dentures. So anyway, they found they found him guilty and hanged him.
And
Webster.
never found the skull.
I don't think they ever found the skull. Yeah, he got rid.
Ironic that he was hung by his neck.
I know.
They found his skull, didn't they? Jesus.
But that was supposed to be like one of the formative cases for forensic anthropology, is that you called in anatomists to look at the bones to help identify the victim. So that was a big case. Wow, and at Harvard, which would have been John Henry Hoyle would have known about that case.
Yes. 49. Yeah, he would have been it's possible.
I mean, they would have known about it.
That a little.
Yeah, years later, he at least would have known about the Parkman case.
Yes, he would have known about it for sure.
Yeah. The other one that they always talk about is in 1897 in Chicago, was the Adolf Lutgert trial. And Lutgert was supposedly the sausage king of Chicago. And I thought, what was it in Ferris Bueller's Day Off? Abe Froman, the sausage king of Chicago. But there actually was a sausage king of Chicago in the 1890s named Adolf Lutgert. And what happened is Lutgert, his wife went missing in May of 1897.
Oh, boy.
And, his story, at first he told his kids that, his adult kids that, oh, she's gone to see her sister. And that always fell through. So then he was like, oh, well, she ran off with another man.
You can't change your story.
No.
You got to stick with the first one.
So they searched his sausage factory.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And in one of the vats, they found what they said was basically a quantity of foul-smelling sludge, which contained 2 of his wife's rings.
No.
Oh, yeah. A corset stay, which you put into your corset.
Yes.
And several pieces of small bone. Okay.
Oh, so we just threw her in a vat? Like a rendering vat or like
Yeah. They think it was
my God.
Potash or something. But
what's potash?
It's a chemical compound that you use to break down things. Kind of like, yeah. But he did it in one of the vats at the sausage factory.
God.
But they
had to find that. They had to search all the vats and
yeah.
Hey, boys, don't use vat number 13. Why? Just trust me. Leave that one alone.
Yeah, yeah. They said that he probably after work after everyone had left. It's a 5-story building. It's still there in Chicago. It's at 1735 West Diversey.
Oh,
And it's,
I'm not far from that. I'm in Chicago right now
I
recording,
know,
and I'm a few L stops away from that.
I know.
1735 North Diversey. That's near the Half Shell. That's a fantastic seafood restaurant where all you can get is crab legs and beer. Highly recommend it. Wow.
But it's still there. It's condos now. They turned it into condos. But you could still see Lukert's sausage factory at 1735 West Diversey. But they had those.
Okay.
They had those little tiny bones. Okay, just a few. And so the police called in George Dorsey, who is the curator of anthropology at the Field Museum, to try to identify if those were human bones or not.
Yes.
And basically, Dorsey said that they belonged to a human hand, foot, and rib. Okay. Now, during the trial, people were like, well, how can you tell by these little tiny bones what they were actually coming from? So there was some debate about whether or not those were really human bones or not. But but I mean, you find the rings in there.
Yeah, I was going to say, you find the rings. He's guilty when I find the corset stay. You know what I mean?
I know.
Like, okay.
So Lukert, though, apparently his factory was having trouble, so he started courting a rich widow, and he basically needed his wife out of the way. So that's why they said he did it. But he wasn't hanged or anything. I guess if you're wealthy enough,
that's been proven over and over again with American justice. You got enough money, you're not going to jail.
Yeah, he got life in prison from it.
Oh, okay, he did get okay. All right.
But again, it was like one of these big cases where in like the history of forensic anthropology where it was the bones that helped identify. Yeah.
God.
All right, John. So
I'm never eating sausage
again. I know. People
do they think that he put some of her in sausage and that people ate it?
That's the legends all came up with that.
It's got to be, right? That's probably what he was doing.
They said that he didn't do it. They think that he just tried to... It would be like putting a body in acid, for example.
Right.
But, I mean, of course, that was the urban legend at the time. Was all like, Luker put her, ground her up and made her into a sausage and all that.
That's what I think. I mean, I'll tell you... I sliced the tip. I worked at a sandwich shop in Kansas City that you know well, and sliced the tip of my finger off while slicing ham on one of those deli slicers.
Yeah.
And they took me down to the emergency room and they said, hey, go find the piece because they could sew it back on the tip of my finger. And they went back up and they had served all the ham. So somebody ate a piece of my finger.
No! Oh,
well, it happened.
Couldn't they with like find it like a tip of a hot dog and sew that onto your finger for the time being?
No, they were like, well, all right, you're screwed. But years, not too long after, I did it again.
Did you?
I did it again. And then they found the piece and sewed it back on. And you can still see it. It's like
really?
You can tell.
Let me take a look at that. Let me see it.
It's right there. It's hard to see. I'll show it to you sometime. But you can see a little circle there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Jeez.
I haven't looked.
That's awful.
That's awful. Yeah, it was awful. Awful feeling.
So on that note, John, I will say it's definitely in real life. It's not as cozy, and it's not as clean as an Agatha Christie novel or a Clue.
But nonetheless, excellent tool, and
Yeah.
Now, have you ever had to do anything like that? Have you been asked to look at some old bones?
No, I've looked at a lot of skeletons, but not in that context. Mm-hmm. So I would, in grad school, I did look at a lot of skeletons. I think I've mentioned before that were part of an unmarked grave or unmarked cemetery.
Yeah.
In Las Vegas, New Mexico. And I'm fascinated by bones. There's so much you could tell from bones, like the wear on the teeth and like just the shape of, like any damage to the bones, arthritis you can see. You could tell like someone's occupation. when they were alive based on certain wear or certain.
That's for sure. I've got comedian bones for sure. My humorous bones are extra thick. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Yeah. There we go. Some bone humor for you.
Multiply that by 5.
Yeah. Dip your waitresses. Well, this has been fascinating. This is human number 2 signing off.
And this is human number 1. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. If you found this interesting, please tell a friend about it. And if you have any ideas or you think any topics that humanity should know about, please reach out to us on Facebook and Instagram.
And if you find a bone buried in your backyard, ship it in. We'll have Professor McCray look at it.
Yeah, we'll zoom you in.
We'll zoom you in.
Thanks a lot, everybody. We love you. Thanks,
Love you.
John.
Good night.
Love you guys.